Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of the Bucket and Hoosier Show. I am Mr. Hoosier. He is Bucket. And as we always start out with, Bucket, how are you doing, buddy?
It sounded like you almost forgot who you were, which makes a lot of sense.
I did for a
You
second.
are a year older today. I mean, you're getting up there in age. And it took me a while, too, in my mid-30s to come to terms with what's really happening. You know, your mind starts losing itself. You already have the kids making you lose your mind. So
Oh my God,
now the
yes.
old age is going to start catching up with you. So everybody say happy birthday to Mr. Hoosier. And
Thank you, buddy. I
welcome
appreciate
him
it.
to
Yes.
the latter years, the midlife almost.
Oh,
honestly.
who's sneaking in there?
I don't need all this, just the computer. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Oh,
I just needed my laptop so I could have another screen.
there you go. Kiddo coming in with the assist. Well, welcome back, everybody.
But he brought me everything, charger and everything.
Well, I mean, he's just that shows that he is thinking through the process.
I know the initiative is there.
What could Dad need?
Yeah.
So we are a week removed from our episode with Raw Greg, which was a fantastic episode last week. He was just full of information and great insights into being a coach of Rocket League, especially after, some of the things that you and I have heard in the last 24 hours of kind of some things that we talked about, right? Of teams splitting up and changing everything. So it is it's interesting to reflect on that episode and then seeing some of those things come to fruition, how it is still a very player-driven league like we talked about. But what do you think? Some of the things that we heard of some of those bubble teams that are splitting up right now and not after they had some good performances. I guess what we're alluding to is pre-jump, finding out that pre-jump is now broken up completely. And a team that had a lot of promise there, beating Dignitas and looking like they were going to be able to get some good momentum going in spring.
Yeah, listen, so you just asked a lot of different things there, but Raw Greg was here last week. We've been super fortunate, right? In the people that have wanted to come chat with us, and then those people start with their network. So shout out to Reese RL, and remember we had Savage, his son, on, and after that conversation, he's out there in the network of his people that he's made over the last year or two with his son, and reaching out and asking people to actively, if they want to chat. And he reached out to Raw Greg, who he knew from and Raw Greg even mentioned it to us that he was helping out a little bit with Savage. So the more people we have like that, the more cool conversations we get to have. So if anybody has any ideas of people they'd like to see or topics to cover, because we have people actually emailing us now, reaching out and saying, hey, it'd be interesting. We have an interesting perspective, right? Another mental coach contacted me, and some other people via our business emails. So it's starting to catch on that we're having these really good conversations, and we're not just driving home only points of, stats or really hitting the things that people are already doing out there. We have our own vision and our own flow for our show, and I think it's really starting to pick up. And Rob Gregg was a prime example of that. He was one of the people who we asked a question to, and it took a conversational takeoff, right? Everything just made sense. The flow of it, we went into topics that we would have never dreamed we're going to have in the conversation. It went almost 2 hours, which is way longer than any other podcast episode we've had. And if you go look back at all the other episodes leading up to that, it makes so much sense. We've had so many cool different avenues to explore, and I feel like it's just going to keep on growing. And it's people like that come on and really show us the potential that we have here that make it really exciting. But anyway, that all leads up to, he was talking and so fired up about how he has been around Rocket League since the beginning, and he hasn't seen a team as focused, as ready, as in the weeds as they are right now, and just ready to do something. And they showed up in a huge way this weekend. So I think we'll get to that here in a little bit on the finishes and how everybody did. But that in and of itself is a huge topic. Then you brought up another topic, which on the outside, we have, again, some contacts, Coach Jesu and Wi-Fi's and the people who are in that bubble scene / RLCS scene and all over, not only US and NA, but everywhere else. And they kind of feed us a little bit of tidbits here and there. And it's one of those things where it sounds like after the last the open, right? After all that happened, people are starting to scramble and say, hey man, we got to get our stuff together, or let's make a change. And they're not giving themselves the chance they need or the time of day. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? We've talked about this for weeks and months, that it's a player run esport. And that's kind of what we're seeing again here. And that's, again, I can't speak to whether it's good or bad for the players, but as a fan, and as someone who talks about it, we can certainly start poking holes in the way that it's run.
Yes, 100%. And I mean, that's like you talked about. It's what we're here to do. We're here to have a conversation. Tonight, the conversation, or today, whenever you listen to this on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, wherever you get your major podcasts from, it's kind of old school. It's going to be just you and me tonight. We don't have any guests lined up, but we do have some in the works for future episodes. But getting to it. So you touched on this past weekend was the Open, right? Everybody had been working up to this, and I would say we kind of got some surprises from what we saw with Gamers 8 to the Open. So looking at the Open, the biggest storylines I would say is V1. They exit pretty early. They exit in lower bracket round 2. They lost to Furia there, and then before that they lost to Complexity. And then also, who was the other one? It was FaZe. FaZe was also a big one that fell out pretty early, losing in lower bracket round 2, losing to G2, and they also lost to Space Station too. Which is, I think that was almost more shocking to everybody than Optic, because Space Station coming off of the first tournament without Daniel. So how are they going to look? How's the team gonna work out? They had picked up, who is it? Was it Hoxer? Yeah, they picked up Hoxer on the team, and they get top 4. So they end up getting top 4. They lost to Gen.G, and then they beat Furia, and then they lose to Optic Gaming, who, as Greg gave us insight on last week, is just a team that is on a mission and ready to prove themselves, and prove themselves they did, finishing out in the top 3, losing to Gen.G at the end. But it was close games against Gen.G. They won 3-1 the first one, then it goes 2-1, 3-2, 5-4 into overtime, and then 2-1. So it's not like they got stomped or anything. The games were there. Just a couple of small mistakes here and there, but overall, yeah, Optic looking really good. And then Complexity winning the entire thing over Gen.G, a team that, last year we're in 2023, so 2021 fall, we were expecting, that's when they came over, and everybody was thinking this is going to be a really strong team, and they've just finally seemed to have found their footing and making a good showing in the Spring Open, which sets them up really good moving forward. But I wonder if we're starting to get to the point of where was I? It was Chalkcast. Chalkcast was talking about, it was team, talking about kind of player movements and how that's gonna still keep happening. But I think we're starting to see where teams are more focused on gelling and actually working together is the teams that are coming out on top, at least in the Spring Open. Even Sup making a pretty good run. They beat M80, but then lose to Furia. So, I mean, there's something to be said here about teams sticking together and how, if it's going to last and help, or will we see any more big moves after spring? But, I mean, how many games did you catch this weekend?
I caught some games each day. And then Sunday I went golfing. So I
Same.
didn't get to watch. I had it on like in the golf cart, but I'm golfing, right? So I watched some of it, but wasn't able to really break down the grand finals. Honestly, after Optic went out, I kind of said, I'll just go watch the rest of this later because I was really hyped about them after our conversation with Raw Greg. And then watching them, I watched as much as I could on Saturday. So I watched a good amount, probably most of it. But yeah, there's some teams that are looking really good. There's some teams that are not looking really good. Some teams that are doing the same kind of things they were doing at the end, like maybe like M80s, um, Shopify's, things like that. And then there's some teams that really weren't. Maybe it's just the double elimination format, like phase, right? I don't know what the deal is with them. But G2 again hit a wall, but they weren't playing bad, and RG couldn't do anything. Like we're seeing some of the same storylines, but also these teams are still there. They're playing the top teams, but you're right. Gen G in complexity, just complexity is hitting it right now more than anybody.
Yeah,
Obviously.
they look really, really good right now. And you got kind of me thinking about it, and I'm going back and looking at last year's spring and the double elimination and seeing if there's any trends that tend to match up with it. About the only thing I can point out is I think NRG. They kind of keep going. They go out in the same spot. But even like if you go what is now the Spring Cup, FaZe doesn't get past round 3 in the lower bracket, and then what would be now the Invitational FaZe wins. So yeah, I think it's kind of what we talked about with Raw Greg. It's that right now we're doing the double elimination bracket where you either start hot and are on it, or you're going to be out very quickly, and there's no room to make it up, which I think is what we all agree is what we don't like about the double elimination.
I don't know. It's it's so two-sided, right? Like it's a double-edged sword here where you're like, yeah, just win games and you'll be in the grand finals. But you're also like, well, I've worked so hard to become a top 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 team that I should get the better matchups beforehand. Okay, yeah, maybe, but this other team's playing well too. Like you're going to have to win these games no matter what. Doesn't matter who comes across your plate. And this is it's a difficult format if you get inside your own head and you're not playing the best Rocket League out of the gate, which we've seen historically. Some teams are slow out of the gate. Some teams show up and play really well at the beginning and then they get fatigued. Some teams are the opposite. And then there's teams that just continuously are in the grand finals no matter what the format is, right? I mean, look at Gen G. They're just there all the time for the past. I can't even remember back now how long it's been since we just haven't seen them.
I think it's 7 of 8. Yeah. If I saw right, I think it's 7 of 8 in the grand finals.
So they're the epitome of what I'm talking about, right? Like they don't care. They don't care what the format is. They're not going to sit there and be upset about it. They're just going to put in the work and get there. That's their plan. And I bet if they hadn't got there, they wouldn't have gone and said, well, the formats really messed us up. They would have been like, we didn't play well. We'll get back on it next time. That's my thought of. Maybe not. Maybe they would complain. I don't know. But I feel like the way that their team is and their chemistry, we're in this for the long haul and we're just going to keep on grinding it out.
Well, you touched on it. And I think it's there has been a lot less talk this year about matchups. And I think it's because I want to say everybody is to that level, but obviously that is not the case because there are certain teams that are performing a lot better. Gen G, and typically FaZe, we saw FaZe not have a good weekend, but this is what makes the roster moves interesting, right? After each regional after each split is that, someone like Space Station, they pick up Hoxer after losing Daniel, and they seem to perform better now with that person than they did with the top player. So does it makes it that much more interesting because these moves happen and then they work out really well, and then you're able to take down what is a big team. So now does that mean that Space Station is a big team? I don't think you can say that after one tournament. It's going to be how do they do in the next tournament and what their matchups look like. But if you're looking at what their matchups were, they took down FaZe and Furia, which Furia had been on a little bit of a struggle bus, but they've bounced back, I think, fairly well.
Listen, you keep saying the same word over and over. Team. Space. If you look at this bracket, and I know you probably don't have the ability because we're using a new, different type of streaming service right now to pull up a web browser and look at it. But let us know too what you think about this format. We're trying new stuff all the time, like what's working. Want to get some vertical formats, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, if you look at this bracket here, I would not have guessed this if you gave me 100 tries, right?
No.
V1 out so early, Space Station making a run to the lower bracket semifinals and getting beat by Optic, who was making an even bigger run than them because they made it to the upper bracket semifinals, right? And then lost to Complexity, who ultimately won the whole thing. And that's a lot to say, but what I'm saying is Space Station, even though they have a new player and a new team dynamic, they figured out a way to win. Optic, we heard it from the horse's mouth. They're on it right now. They're out there doing more than anybody else, they feel like, and they can't lose. And they have that confidence, that chip on their shoulder. And they proved a little bit. Top 3 finish here. And then you have teams like V1, who everyone's hyping up because they have these 2 superstars on their team. And undoubtedly, they're going to figure it out and be good. If they don't, it will be a really big disappointment. And that's a lot of pressure for some kids, right? So maybe that comes into play. There's a lot of factors, but at the end of the day, the team has to come together and win matches. That's it. That's all there is. I'm watching I can't even talk about it. My baseball team, the St. Louis Cardinals, go on. They just lost 8 in a row until yesterday when Paul Goldschmidt put them on their back and hit 3 home runs in one game because they're just not working together as a team and they're not doing the things they need to do. It happens all the time, but then maybe they'll go on a winning streak and win 20 in a row, right? Like, who knows? But these teams are actively showing up. Complexity, Gen G, all the time. Then you got these new teams saying, we've been in the top 8, we've been in the top 6. Optic and Space Station saying we're showing up, and they did. So the team has to gel and it has to be hitting its stride when these weekends come.
They do, and that's why, like, you have to hit your stride, especially in the double limb. But do you think at all V1, like next in the Spring Cup, does V1 need to have a top 4 finish? And if not, do you call the move a dud at this point?
No. It's
like, how much time do you give them?
Well, first of all, how much time do they give themselves? It seems like people are giving up on each other fairly quickly these days in this world. But it's the last split of the season. I don't foresee anything really changing with those 2 players anytime soon. I think they're going to try and build something with them, whether or not they take calm with them. I mean, that's up to them, right? Like, I don't know.
That's been my speculation all along, is that if they don't have the results immediately here in spring, that Calm's on his way out the door and he's looking for a new team come next season.
Regardless, right? We know that Beast Mode and Daniel want to play together, right? Like,
correct.
That's a known thing. They're going to do everything they can to play together, whether or not it's under a flag of someone who is as big as V1 or not. They're going to do what they can. And now that they're signed, I don't see that changing. So I feel like they're going to get it figured out. I don't think we're going to be sitting here in a year and being like, wow, that was just brutal. I don't think so, but it could be. They have to play the games, right? Like, on paper, who's beating them? But in the matchups, several people do.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. And I was just looking at another team, Koi, and after their fantastic run in the Gamers 8 qualifier, They did a lower bracket run in there, so they lost to G2 there. I'm trying to think because I was trying to think of a team that definitely struggled this weekend and, with lack of a better term, underperformed. And to me, they stuck out because they were able to punch their ticket into Gamers 8. But they also had Optic in their first matchup. They lose 3-1. And then they had G2, and they lose 3-2. And going back and comparing that with Gamers 8, they lost to G2 3-0 at the start of that tournament in the bracket. And then they go down and they make a lower bracket run. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's another controversy. So they make their lower bracket run, beating Axel Complexity, beating Optic and G2, and then beating version 1. But I forgot that, and this was also something I heard us talk about, because they picked up a ones player to sub in Gamers 8 to do all the 1v1s. They picked up Cosmic, who right now has been at the top of the 1v1 leaderboard. He's not even officially on Koi's roster. They just have him as a sub and not using him in this 3v3 format. So it's almost like you can't even look at Gamers 8 and apply that, what's going to happen in this double elimination 3v3 bracket, because it's tainted a little bit, right? They were using a player in that they're not using in regular RLCS. Which that's a whole nother topic. I heard there's a big old discussion about that of should Gamers 8 be allowing that right now, of you being able to just go pick up a 1v1 player and put them as your sub and then only pulling them in for the 1v1s in that tournament.
Well, it comes down to that. I want to see the best players out there doing what they do, right? Like that's the epitome of it. Go out there and play the matchups that you're best at. Get on a team. There could be a team that's better at the 3v3, 2v2, 1v1 format than just one team that's good at one of them, right? So I want to see that. I want to see it. Why do they care? There's no there's no like cross problems. I don't see why that's a problem. I don't.
And I think that's where I was going with. I when I was listening to that on Chalkcast, I think I had the same thought process as you of why is that a problem? Like, that shouldn't be a problem. That's their tournament. It's different. It's not RLCS. It's completely separate. It's its own thing. So why should that be an issue? Now Cosmic's gotten a chance to shine and show what he can do. Like, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Like, it shouldn't be an issue. Shiz in chat, crew battle is Rocket League, though, more so than RLCS. That's interesting. Why, Shiz, if you can elaborate on that in the comments, why you think that. Because I don't know if I agree with that.
Cardinals beat the Cubs, by the way, just now, so I'm pretty happy about that. Yeah, baby.
You and your baseball.
I just got a notification. It makes me so stressed out when the Cardinals and the Cubs play. Listen, I'm excited for that format, but I don't think it's it's like pickup basketball and Gus Macker and a 5v5 all were in one tournament, right? Like, not the same players aren't going to be good at all that.
True, they shouldn't be. Not that they shouldn't be. Not every player, is going to be able to do that. But does that fit a crew battle? Like, I don't know. I can see where the issue is, but it doesn't mean I fully agree with it. And I think Papa Rizzo just said the point that what Chalkcast was getting to, the only thing that was an issue, the invited teams weren't able to adjust their roster.
Oh. Well,
so if you were a play-in team, you were able to adjust your roster and add a sub. Invited teams, it was just who they invited.
So the players were invited as a unit.
Correct.
That's interesting.
And your invited teams, like for that, were G2, Complexity, V1, and Space Station.
So they're active roster, right? Like if they had subs on the roster, maybe they could get in. But these other teams that were able to play in, they could just say,
because they were an open qualifier.
Yeah,
they just signed up.
That's a tricky thing to fix. I mean, I don't even know where you start there.
I don't either, because it like we said, Gamers 8, it's its own thing. But then, like you talked about, how is this a cross problem? That's where it's a cross problem, is that Gamers 8 is inviting this team and going, your roster. Well, what's a roster anymore? Like, what is a set roster? So they're inviting, they just, so again, it goes back to player ran, right? It's the G2 wasn't invited. It was JNAP, Chicago, and Atomic were invited.
Under the G2 banner, yeah.
And they played under the G2 banner. It goes back to what we keep talking about, and I know it sounds like beating a dead horse.
Would these teams have picked someone else up? Is this even a problem that, like, are we solving a problem that's not a problem by even discussing this? I don't know.
Well, so Papa Rizzo says in chat, Cosmic isn't even a sub on Koi, but if you go look at Liquipedia, which is the only official source that we have, they have him listed as a sub, but so they came through closed qualifier. So hang on, was he registered as a sub?
Hang on.
Don't
forget to sub to Mr. Hoosier since it's his birthday, by the way, boys.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop! Happy birthday. I'm going to keep saying it because I'm going to sing it eventually. And why isn't the animated emotes animated right now? I don't understand.
Do what?
I have an animated emote where you slide in with your arms crossed on Twitch, and it's titled "Not Impressed." And
yeah, I see it doing
animated. It is on yours?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not doing it on mine. That's weird.
So
I think it's a hilarious emote. Whatever. Let's get back to the show. Happy birthday!
Wait, no. Just to go back to Papa Rizzo, they had him registered on start.gg as their sub. So he was registered with the team for the Open. So, I mean, no one knows where the line. We don't know where the line's drawn because nobody's that information. I wonder if you can go find it on the Gamers 8. Wait, Papa isn't. No, he is in start.gg for the Open. They have him. Wait, hang on. You keep reminding me to do this, and I keep forgetting. He's listed in there.
Are you talking to me?
No, it's more aimed at Papa Rizzo right now in chat. Because Papa Rizzo keeps saying, yeah, but that he's not on their team as a sub for RLCS. So, okay.
I need dark mode or something. That's so bright. Sorry. Happy birthday, of course.
Thank you, everybody.
What song did you sing on my birthday? Well, happy birthday, of course.
Don't do it. You guys keep doing that, and he's going to end up singing it, which will just be tragic for all of us.
Change that. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, back where we were... So I guess like he's officially, maybe they never like officially came out and announced it, but they do have him listed on there. So he's on the roster now. But it was still not fair. Like I'm curious to know from Gamers 8, what did they, it had to be just the specific players that they invited then, instead of this org, to where the org could add somebody on their team. So
again, I don't.
Like, do you think G2 should have been able to pick somebody up?
What did they want to?
Wi-Fi. We're talking about Gamers 8 and how Koi added Cosmic to their roster for Gamers 8. Yet, a team like the word out there is like the invited teams, your G2, V1 Space Station, they weren't allowed to adjust their roster for Gamers 8.
I don't think it's a big deal. I think teams like G2, I think the teams who got invited are like, bring them on. Bring whoever you want. Who are you going to bring that's better than us?
I don't know. That's a lot of money up for grabs. That's a huge price pool.
Baby. You got to show up.
Gotta show up. G2 was invited. How do I have more information than you guys?
I'm not invited.
They were invited to. Okay, they were invited to the. Okay, Gamers Without Borders. Sorry, not Gamers 8. They were invited to Gamers Without Borders.
GWB.
Gamers 8 is the final, and your teams invited are FaZe, Furia, Genji, Carmine, Ground Zero, Secret, Ninjas in Pajamas, Team Liquid, Pioneers, Rule 1, Falcons, Elevate, Limitless, and Gaming Gladiators.
The top 4 teams, so G2, V1, Koi, Optic.
They weren't. They were still not allowed to.
Gamers 8.
Correct. They qualified for Gamers 8, but since
they're not allowed to bring
to adjust their roster
after Gamers Without Borders.
Wi-Fi. That's kind of like that. That actually works out. Wi-Fi. Go listen to Chalkcast from last week, and that was a big talking point that they had. Johnny Boy and them were touching on that.
Don't send people to other podcasts. Listen.
But there's good information. We're all about sharing information.
No one who's winning gets mad at other people for winning. That's a quote that I tweeted out because I don't get mad. Let's keep winning, baby. Let's go.
Right. We're going to keep doing that, but there's still good information there.
Yeah, those guys are cool over there. For the most part.
Could you roll your eyes any harder?
It's a filter.
I know.
I'm not even looking at the camera.
That's the scary part right now. So that was NA. I mean, that was NA and Gamers Without Borders. That's everything that happened there. We have coming up this week the EU.
Ew.
Ew. What happened last week? I can't remember. Wait, what was? Oh, it was
that old age creeping up on you.
No, it is. Yeah, I was. So it's back to Gamers 8, Gamers Without Borders. I was trying to think, where was Zen popping off, and it was Gamers Without Borders, and Zen and Vitality. They just that. Did you watch any of that gameplay?
I didn't. I did see some highlights from somewhere. Jesu, maybe. But I
think Jesu had posted one. I am interested to see EU this weekend and see how they are able to fare, and if they do take down Carmine Corp. Because right now it seems like a team that could do it.
Those French teams, man.
They're nuts. I still don't. I just don't understand.
All those French players are just. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I would love to know what makes them click.
I think it's going to be a great weekend though for EU, right? Like they're the 12th. They're Friday, Saturday, Sunday this week, right? That's what we were talking about.
Yep.
I mean, they've got some pretty even quadrants in there again. So I'm excited. More excited than I have been to watch EU in other formats. I think I am now. I don't know why exactly, but I feel like it's time to learn what's going on over there and how NA could kind of start learning something from them.
Yes. Well, and you talked about Quadrant, right? Quadrant, that's a whole new roster that they got. They disbanded their entire team. So they're starting from scratch. Yes, Cash, Ixo, and Snasky. And they picked up.
That's not good for them, right? And they can't get any points.
Right. But they didn't I don't think they didn't have a shot anyways of getting to Worlds. After starting hot in fall, and then they just never recovered.
Oh, you're right. They all the end of April. Interesting.
Yeah, they make that big move.
Where was?
What?
they made Relating Wave a sub.
Yeah, they held on to him as his move to the substitute position.
Okay,
but they were way down here. They weren't gonna have a shot to get there anyways.
Give me a shot.
Wi-Fi in chat, yeah, and points don't mean shit now because we don't get RLCS tags for rankings anymore.
You don't get the RLCS Elite, RLCS Participant. Those ones is that what he's talking about?
I would imagine.
See, Hoosier, you want to know because you don't get to see those tags very often.
Wait, okay, so I just...
Because you need glasses, because you're so old.
Oh, stop it.
If you guys didn't know, it's Hoosier's birthday today.
Yeah, I know you keep saying. Wi-Fi said nope, so that confirms what you were saying. Never mind, I was reading up on something else. But yeah, for EU, the other big team to look at is BDS, right? BDS played in Gamers Without Borders, but they lost out to SUH. They lost to German Amigos and to SUH. So that's
what I was gonna say. Did they though? Did they though play?
Yeah, they didn't play much. That's for sure. So they are looking to have a good. What did Rise say? I heard Rise say, he was glad that it was Gamers Without Borders that they didn't have a good showing, and it's not RLCS. So their time to work out the kinks and get on the same page and mesh really good is what their hope is going into this weekend. But right now, BDS on the outside looking in as far as worlds go. They're sitting in 8th place right now, so they definitely do need to they got to get some wins.
At it though, right? Like, yeah, we messed up, but guess what? That was just preparation for what we really care about. But now you got to show up. I mean, win some games here, guys. It all comes down to it, right? Like speculating, talking about the weekends. At the end of the day, there's teams who keep showing up and winning, and there's teams who have been glowing up and winning, who I'm excited to keep watching, who I want a lot of RLCS Twitch points on this weekend, by the way, because no one was betting on Optic. No one was betting on Space Station.
No.
Some of them weren't even on Complexity side in some of those, like the Gen G one. So these teams they're playing well.
Yeah,
so
even
who's going to play well in EU, right? Like that. BDS has not historically be able to figure it out for any amount of time.
Not this season at all. It was like you win Worlds, and there was a talk of like right now it seems like there's big complacency when you win, right? I heard Rice talking about like you win Worlds and then what? And my brain went to Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. Yeah, like you buckle down, you do it again. Why are you satisfied with just winning one? Why don't you want to keep going? Like that's what you're here to do. That should be what your drive is. It's not to just win it once and I'm world champion and move on. You should want to keep winning that. And hearing him talk about that, and if that is a mindset with a lot of Rocket League players right now, it's like, well, that's kind of nerve-wracking a little bit, because why would someone come back? Even though we see this past weekend, Scrub Killer, he's back. His team, they punched their ticket back into RLCS, coming through the open qualifiers. So, Raw Greg, what is up, buddy? And everybody in chat, thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Hi, I'm Nate. How you guys doing? You guys are keeping us company right now, and we greatly appreciate it as we
Raw Greg, we talked about you several times today.
We did.
What up? Just how great of a run you guys went on, and also how you called it and how fun it was to chat with you and the great conversation. If you don't know, Hoosier doesn't even really know this, but because I'm like a stats nerd and I look at numbers a lot and I love it. I'm an engineer by trade and I love all those things. But your episode on Spotify is about to surpass our number one most played episode from 7 weeks ago that came out. So, and it's only been 1 week. So I'm excited to see where that one goes. So keep pushing people over there, and it could be a really big one, because especially after this weekend, you guys did so well and you called it all. And I think people can learn a lot from what you had to say. But anyway, that episode is about to be our most played episode already.
Yes, it was fantastic. I kept thinking about it all week. It was just a good one to listen to, and I even listened to it back a couple of times. But yeah, so we need to see BDS. They've got to show up, or I think
we're gonna get Wi-Fi back up here to try it again. Yeah, but
we do. We need Wi-Fi to take a Monday off from work.
Also, Wi-Fi. We have some plans for some of those older episodes. Like, there's going to be times where we can't do something every single week. We're going to have an archive of the older episodes to push out to Spotify, like throwback episodes. So be ready. You'll get in there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about doing that. You're the man with the plan. I'm just here along for the ride.
Yeah, that's true. But look at him. He's talking about getting him and Wonder Mike up there. That would be awesome.
That would be fantastic. We would love to have you guys up here.
Oh,
and
baby.
Chatting about what's going on with you all. We haven't had a player up here yet. That's like the one thing we haven't checked off yet. But yeah, it should be a very interesting weekend, and I hope everybody is excited to tune in and watch.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's just I just wish we had seating right now so we could see what the bracket looks like going forward. Because even some of the predictions that Greg had last week about the bracket did not come to fruition. Some of what he thought were going to be like the first matchups, but
didn't much matter. Some of the teams that got good matchups still didn't come out. But yeah, we'll see. And then we'll chat about it next week, and then maybe we'll have some more guests. We have lined up, getting a calendar going. I'm excited, man. This summer is going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it. But I think we're going to put a cherry on top of it for tonight, guys. It was just a quick. We didn't have anybody lined up to interview and chat with, so we just wanted to make sure we were staying committed and coming on Monday night to chat with you all on here, and just kind of quickly glance over what all has happened in the last week, which it was a lot. And there were a lot of good matchups that happened, a lot of surprising, to some people surprising, but like you said, after we talked to Greg, for us, it was not surprising how Optic worked out and how they performed. Definitely, I think the surprise of the weekend was Space Station and how they ended up. And then obviously V1 and FaZe not even getting to where they thought they could be. So I don't know. It's so hard to gauge, but very exciting to watch, and I can't wait to see more and see how these games work out.
Yeah, I think this spring's going to be a big tell for what's going to happen in the future of RLCS and the teams and individual players, whether these hyped up teams are going to show up and start building, whether some of these teams who are really on the come up continue on that path and the changing of the guard, or what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of storylines to be told here. So I'm pretty excited about that. And once again, it is Hoosier's birthday, so happy birthday to him. But yeah, man, let's get out of here. I think it was a good short episode just to keep us going. We're going to try and hit 50 weeks every year. And this was one of those where we got that taken care of. But in the future, we have some pretty cool conversations lined up. And anybody who's willing to reach out to their network and say, hey, come have a conversation with these guys. I think that's our bread and butter right now, is those great conversations and getting people some information they would have never seen before or heard before. And also tell your friends, man, Spotify, that's where it's at, or any platform. But these podcast formats, like I find myself now listening to more podcasts since we've been doing podcasting and getting so much good information. And the more people out there, I didn't realize Chalked was on Spotify, and Big Fans Wave Dash is on there, and Bel Air's is on there. Like there's other people now that I'm starting to subscribe to just because I've been in there. So we need to keep networking with these people who have these really cool ideas, and they're all doing something different, right? Like some of these guys are having multi-people conversations. Some of these guys are talking specifically stats and upcoming information, and some people are talking about the fantasy part of it and all that. And we're doing the conversationalist side. So there's plenty of room out here for everyone to grow. I'm excited. But yeah,
I agree. I think it's going to be fun going forward. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight, and we will be sure to catch you guys next week and wrap up what happened in EU, and maybe we'll have somebody on. But thank you for all the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. I am another year older, but not wiser. So we will catch you all next time. Bye.
Keep trying.